Mr. Yakamoto. Welcome back to the Gap. How those assorted tank tops work out for you?
Mr. Yakamoto.
That's a scene from Minority Report where Tom Cruise's character is targeted with ads after machines scan his face and identify him. Not as far-fetched now as when the movie came out back in 2002. Because these days, your face is no longer just your face. It's a data set that machines can use to ID you, and often you won't even have a clue. The possible applications are endless, like in retail. Store owners can now scan their customers' faces and compare them against a database of known shoplifters, like they do in this Philadelphia grocery store. Even celebrities are getting in on it. Take Taylor Swift and her stalkers. Rolling Stone magazine reported her security team scanned fans' faces at a performance last year to see if there were any in the crowd. Sometimes we do know we're being scanned. For example, the Canada Border Services Agency uses this technology at 10 major airports. In Halifax, for example, you can get a quick face scan at customs after returning from abroad. So law enforcement may love it, but here's the thing, the technology is known to make mistakes. Just last year, the American Civil Liberties Union used Amazon's facial recognition technology to scan photos of members of Congress. But they found the machines mistakenly identified over 20 of them as people who've been arrested for crimes. 20 mistakes. It makes errors, but it can also be spookily precise. So how exactly does facial recognition work? Unlike your fingerprint, your face can be scanned at a distance. Advances in artificial intelligence can now identify you in the dark, even if you try to disguise yourself. It only takes seconds to identify your face in a crowd, even if you're moving. So how exactly? Well, software maps your face by searching for unique physical characteristics, like the distance between the width of your nose or the distance between your eyes. And then the results are compared with images in a database. We wanted to see the technology in action, and a California company called TrueFace AI agreed to test it for us to see if it could spot me in a crowd. So how do we do that? Well, first, we installed their app on our laptop, and we put a couple of pictures of me into their database. But you know what? To do a real test, we need a crowd. So can we have an Insta crowd here? Well, small crowd perhaps. This is a few of my colleagues from The Weekly. So we're going now to open up the app and see, oh my goodness, like almost right away. The rest of you are all blanked out because the technology wasn't looking for you, but there, floating above my head, is my name. It spotted me almost right away. That's quite something. We discovered something else in all of this, that this company is currently in talks to sell their technology to a Canadian police department, but they wouldn't tell us who. So who could they be in talks with? Well, we've done some digging. We called the biggest police departments in the country, and 4 tell us they are exploring the use of this technology: Edmonton, Ottawa, Peel, and York. And is any department using it now? Well, we've known for a while that Calgary has the technology, but now Toronto tells The Weekly that it does too. And Montreal or Halifax, they won't tell us. This is the statement we got from Montreal Police. It says, "We use many legal investigation techniques, but for multiple reasons, including security reasons, the force does not disclose its investigative techniques." We got a similar response from Halifax. It tells us, "It is not our practice to disclose the use of investigative techniques other than when required as part of a court process." But in the US, it's not a secret. It's already widespread there. At least a quarter of American police departments now run face recognition searches. Something to think about if you ever go to a protest. Remember Freddie Gray? He died in Baltimore police custody in 2015. A lot of people were outraged. They demonstrated for months. And at some point, Baltimore police started scanning the protesters' social media accounts looking for photos. And then they used facial recognition to see if any of them had outstanding warrants. The protesters had no idea their faces were being scanned. But now there's a backlash brewing. State legislators in California are considering banning facial recognition in body cameras worn by police there. It's become such a big concern in the U.S. that just this Wednesday, Democrat and Republican lawmakers held a hearing on the issue. Among those who testified was Claire Garvey. She's a senior associate at Georgetown University's Center on Privacy and Technology. So, Claire, you have some concerns about this, but why would it be a problem for police, say, to, I don't know, look for a pedophile around a school or to look for a terrorist in a crowd?
There are undoubtedly uses of this technology that could promote public safety. The problem right now is that there are no rules around its use and there's no transparency. So as a consequence, we have no idea whether it's being used just for those public safety instances or whether it's being used to surveil public speech, public demonstrations.
We've learned from the Facebook example that data is so valuable. I would imagine that facial recognition data is extremely valuable. Is this even stoppable, this industry?
Face recognition has been able to become so common thanks to the fact that there are so many face photographs on file, both with agencies. Think of a face photograph database in the United States, passports, visas, driver's licenses, mugshots. Those are mostly face recognition databases now. And in addition, we present our faces in photographs everywhere. Facebook, Flickr, and other online services. All of these provide the opportunity or the risk of being turned into a biometric.
We saw recently a man in the UK tried to disguise his face when he was walking in front of one of these cameras, and he was fined. Do we have a right to not be identified?
In the US, there's a tension between whether we have a right to something that we present in public, our face, or whether we have a right to the privacy of our own identity. This is the tension that face recognition raises. I would argue that face surveillance, as is used in the UK, does present very real concerns about our rights to freely and anonymously associate and engage in public speech, and also our right to privacy in our movements across time and space. Imagine I'm walking down the street. Yes, I'm in public, but I am going to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting or a drug rehabilitation center or an HIV treatment clinic. That is incredibly personal information that is betrayed by my location. I have a right to privacy to that, even though I am displaying my face in public.
Claire Garvey, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Claire Garvey in Washington. So there have been a lot of concerns raised about facial recognition in Canada too. Last summer, a camera was discovered inside a mall directory at a Calgary shopping centre. Cadillac Fairview, which owns the mall, said the camera was just compiling age and gender information about shoppers, that there was no personal identification. The program has been suspended, but not before a complaint was filed. So now privacy commissioners are investigating what exactly that camera was being used for. Joining me now is the Information and Privacy Commissioner of British Columbia, Michael McAvoy. So, Michael, you're looking into Cadillac Fairview's use of cameras in 3 of their malls. Are we being spied on, and is that allowed?
Well, it's not, and that's the reason we're investigating along with the Alberta Privacy Commissioner and the Canadian Commissioner. You need, in the private sector, if your information is going to be collected, you need the consent of the individuals that you're collecting it from. So it's not only appropriate, it's actually against the law to be collecting that kind of information without people's knowledge. And on top of that, to be used for something like facial recognition technology, for facial recognition, would be almost certainly inappropriate and outside the law.
But they were doing it, and you only found out about it because some shopper noticed that, oh, there's some weird camera moving there.
Right. Well, we did receive a complaint, and that's why we're investigating and looking at it now, and we'll be coming to a conclusion about it very shortly.
So doesn't that sort of say a lot? Like, you need a complaint to go oh my goodness, there's a problem here?
Well, and that's one of the challenges actually with new and burgeoning technology is that we've asked our own provincial government, I know the federal commissioner has asked the Canadian Parliament for greater audit and investigation powers that doesn't require a complaint, that allows us to proactively go in and look behind the curtains. People often don't know what to complain about because it's concealed. And so that's one of the powers certainly that commissioners need to really deal with these modern technologies, to pull back the curtain so that we can look at, understand, and where things are being done improperly, to make sure that that's not happening.
And now, of course, cameras are everywhere. CCTV has been around for a long time. Now police have in some cases, have the body cameras. We're surrounded by this. Is this a growing issue?
It is a growing issue, and it's an issue on the body-worn cameras that police are wearing. Canadian commissioners have actually issued guidance to police forces across the country on that matter to make sure that data is being gathered, people's images are being collected appropriately, and it's being used appropriately.
So can images from body cameras in Canada be used through facial recognition to look for something?
Well, theoretically, sure, that's possible to do once you've collected an image. Absolutely.
So Montreal, for example, is telling us that we're not going to tell you what we use to investigate or to surveil people. We're not going to tell you.
So that's not appropriate, because I think if people are going to have trust in a system where if FRT, facial recognition technology, is being used appropriately for appropriate investigations, police need to be transparent about that so that the public can have confidence in those kinds of systems. The fact that law enforcement would want to conceal or not share with the public what they're collecting, how they're using it, I think is really problematic. It's going to really undermine the public's trust in our law enforcement.
Toronto says that it is used by the forensic unit to match up people against their existing mugshots. Is that okay?
It might be appropriate if it's targeted, as opposed to a fishing expedition. You know, we'd have to look at every instance where these things happen and how it's being employed. So it may be. The problem is, though, that if it's not subject to some oversight to make sure that, in fact, it's being used properly so that the public can be assured that this is, in fact, a proper use of the technology that's for public safety, it may be, but without that oversight and lack of transparency, that is not going to happen.